This is me, and I'm about to open an email that I'd been anticipating for months. My invitation to call into the Dave Ramsey Show and do my debt-free scream for millions of people. But little do I know that instead, my application has been rejected. Hello and welcome to Practical Personal Finance, where you get the information you need to understand and succeed with money. I'm Andrew Shear, and this story starts in 2017 with a mountain of student loan debt, an addiction to running, and a pair of orange earbuds that you can still buy on Amazon for $8.98. The fact that those earbuds were orange is of little significance, except that orange happens to be my favorite color. But the fact that they go for the low price of $8.98 is an important detail. Because for someone who owned a business and employed 6 other people, you might be inclined to say that these were a fairly inexpensive pair of earbuds. I used these earbuds almost every day while I was training for my first marathon. And it was through these very earbuds that I began listening to the Dave Ramsey Show in podcast format. If you're not familiar with the Dave Ramsey Show, it's a daily radio show where people from all over the country call in and ask the host, Dave Ramsey, for his advice on how to win with money. It's a 3-hour show that's live every weekday in the afternoon, and it's later repackaged and repurposed as a podcast and a YouTube show. When I started listening to the Dave Ramsey Show, I became absolutely infatuated with it. To me, it was just so fascinating to take a peek behind the curtain of other people's financial lives. I was surprised to learn that there were a ton of people like me with more student loan debt than I even wanted to think about. What I liked best about the show, however, was a recurring segment called the Debt-Free Scream. This is where someone would call in or go into the studio and tell their story about how they paid off all of their debts. They tell you how much debt they paid off, how long it took, and how much they earned at their jobs. Dave then asks some questions like,
what do you tell people the secret to getting out of debt is?
Or,
so who are your biggest cheerleaders?
And finally, the segment concludes with the iconic scream,
I'm debt-free!
In 2018, after a year of listening to the Dave Ramsey Show every day, my wife and I decided it was time to get our act together and pay off all of our debts. We agreed that when we were finished, we would go on the show and do our very own debt-free scream for millions of people listening and watching. What followed were 2.5 years of hard work and sacrifice. There were career shifts, a move across the country, and months on the road for work, all in the name of generating as much income as possible in a short amount of time. We watched friends and family members dine at fancy restaurants, go on amazing vacations, and purchase new vehicles. But we remained focused on our singular goal, to become debt-free. And I'd be lying if I told you the results were not 100% worth it. We paid off over $182,000 in debt, including over $175,000 in student loans. And the encouragement we received from listening to other people share their story on the Dave Ramsey Show was absolutely vital to our success. By the way, if you're interested in learning how in the world we went from over $182,000 in debt to being completely debt-free in less than 2.5 years, I made a video where I tell the whole story. Link is down below. Naturally, after this life-changing experience, I was beyond excited to go on the Dave Ramsey Show and share our story, to inspire other people who might be in a similar situation. So a few weeks after becoming debt-free, I logged on to Dave Ramsey's website and submitted an application for doing my debt-free scream. The application itself was pretty simple. It asked for things like the amount of debt we paid off, how long it took, and our annual household income. All things Dave asks you about when you make your appearance on the show. It also asks a few questions about your financial habits, like whether or not you have and use credit cards, whether you financed anything new during your debt-free journey, and if you borrowed from your retirement fund to help with the debt payoff. If any of those situations apply to you, they ask for an explanation, since technically it would be out of line with what Dave teaches on the show. I submitted our application, and then we waited. And waited. And then finally, 4 months later, I got an email from someone on Dave's team. Hi, Andrew. Congratulations on becoming debt-free. On your application, you indicated that you used a credit card at gas stations and paid that credit card on a weekly basis. Unfortunately, because this isn't in line with what Dave teaches, you won't be able to do your debt-free scream on the Dave Ramsey Show. We'd still love for you to come by and visit us. And just like that, my dream of doing a debt-free scream on the Dave Ramsey Show was crushed. Now, before I say anything else, I want to say that I completely respect the decision to reject my application on the basis of still possessing and using a credit card. At the end of the day, it's Dave's radio show and he has the right to accept or reject any application for any reason he sees fit. But that being said, I want to give a little bit of context here to why I still possess a credit card that I use at gas stations and pay off on a weekly basis. According to the Federal Trade Commission, the most common type of fraud in the United States is identity theft, with over 650,000 reports in 2019. And the most common type of identity theft is credit card fraud, with over 270,000 reports in 2019 alone. Assuming that all credit card holders are age 15 or older, that means you have about a 1 in 1,000 chance of having your credit card number stolen in any given year. I personally consider myself to be pretty careful when it comes to my card information, but in reality, all it takes is one transaction at a seedy gas station after a video shoot for a client, and before you know it, you're on the phone with your bank's fraud department about a $2,800 purchase at a duty-free store in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, that's happened to me. And although I'm all for using a debit card and only spending the money you have in the bank, it's nice to have another level of protection for when something like this happens. When it happened to me, I just had to use my debit card for a week while I waited for my replacement credit card in the mail. It was a little inconvenient to have to go through the process of getting this new card, but at least it didn't prevent me from accessing my money in the bank in the interim. Now, on my debt-free scream application, after indicating that I used a credit card at gas stations, I provided this very explanation. I also explained that the charges on the credit card were budgeted for and planned in advance, and that the card balance was zeroed out at least once per week. And despite all that, my debt-free scream application was rejected. I gotta be honest, getting that email made me a little bit upset, because in my mind, it all comes down to the age-old debate of the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. I'll be the first to admit, I did not follow Dave's teachings to the letter. I did not immediately cut up my credit cards at the outset of my debt-free journey. Why not? Because credit cards never have been or will be the problem for me. My problem was that between the ages of 18 and 22, I treated student loans like monopoly money. And for 6 years after graduating from college, I sat on my hands, wondering when I'd finally get around to paying it all off. That's when I got on board with the spirit of what Dave teaches, took control of my money for the first time in my life, and became debt-free. When I filled out that application and said, yes, I have a credit card, did I know there was a decent chance my application would be rejected? Yeah, I did. Do I believe for a second that every single person who goes on the Dave Ramsey Show and does a debt-free scream has literally cut up their credit cards and closed the accounts like Dave says? No, I don't. If I was Dave Ramsey and someone provided the explanation I did, would I be able to see past that and welcome that person on the show? I'd like to think I would. Should I have just lied about having a credit card, knowing there was no way for them to actually check, so that my application would have been accepted? No way. Not worth it. Maybe I'll never get to do my debt-free scream for millions of people live on the Dave Ramsey Show, but at least I'll always have the satisfaction of knowing that my wife and we paid off over $182,000 in less than 2.5 years, and we changed our lives in the process. And now, it's time for me to count it down. 3, 2, 1. I'm debt-free!
Yeah! Well done! That is fabulous.
What stage are you at in your debt-free journey? I'm ready to cheer you on. So let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out my debt-free story by clicking right here. And if you'd like to support me on my mission to help 1 million people better their relationship with money, then click right here to become a subscriber. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Andrew Shear, and I'll see you next time.